The future of Rikers Island, following the planned closure of its jail complex in the coming years, was discussed during a town hall meeting held on June 6 in Jackson Heights by Western Queens elected officials, environmental advocates, and criminal justice stakeholders. Entitled Renewable Rikers, the town hall focused on proposals that would make Rikers Island the heart of New York City's green infrastructure. Councilmember Costa Constantinides, chair of the Council's Environmental Protection Committee, who led the forum, was joined by U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, State Senator Jessica Ramos, Assemblymember Catalina Cruz, and Councilmember Daniel Drum. All lawmakers talked passionately in support of implementing the proposed environmental and green options for Rikers Island. We can make sure this land is never used for any other atrocity again, Constantinides stressed in his opening remarks, further adding, quote, "We can make sure that it doesn't become a playground for the rich," end quote. Constantinides and the rest of the lawmakers also spoke about, quote, environmental racism, as they described how the city's lower-income neighborhoods and communities are more exposed to pollution due to their close proximity to the city's two airports, power plants, or wastewater treatment plants. A renewable Rikers Island is exactly the kind of vision that we can expose, create, develop, and then bring into fruition, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez stressed in her remarks, adding, quote, "If you put solar panels on 25% of Rikers Island, we will be able to close every toxic power plant that has been opened in the last 2 decades in New York City. We are here to make sure that no person is subject to dirtier air or getting lead in their blood because of where they were born and who they are," end quote. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, a major advocate for the Green New Deal, a policy package that she believes will address climate change by reducing carbon emissions and promote renewable energy, and furthermore, as she advocates, will also give special attention to policies that would affect minority and lower-income communities, was cheered on by a crowd of fans who waited to attend the meeting. However, due to lack of seating in the small venue, many were not able to get in. Across the street, a handful of pro-Trump supporters were present. Although they were apparently reserved and peaceful, one Ocasio-Cortez supporter walked across the street and tore down their sign for some reason. The police intervened shortly thereafter. As the town hall progressed, Professor Rebecca Bradspies, founding director of CUNY Law School's Center for Urban Environmental Reform, moderated a panel that included Cecile Corbin-Mark, deputy director and director of policy initiatives at We Act for Environmental Justice, Maritza Silva Farrell, executive director of Align, Rachel Spector, director of the Environmental Justice Program at New York Lawyers for the Public Interest, and Marco Barrios, Just Leadership USA. The panel focused on the need for Rikers Island to be used for renewable energy and other infrastructure, most of which is based on residential neighborhoods. Panelists offered different perspectives about what this plan might look like going forward and how best to implement it. At the end of the discussion, the panelists took questions submitted by the audience about what a renewable Rikers Island might look like. New York City has pledged to close Rikers by 2027 following the Lippman Commission's recommendations that using the remote island for jails had led to almost non-stop brutality, extremely inefficient operational costs, and negative health risks for both inmates and correctional officers. The independent panel suggested using the 415-acre island for critical environmental infrastructure, among other uses, as well as public space to memorialize the wrongs committed there. Rikers Island is within the 22nd District, represented by Councilmember Costa Constantinidis. A collaboration between the Councilman's office and the Center for Urban Environmental Reform found that using 100 acres of the island for solar generation could justify closing nearly a dozen power plants built in the last 2 decades. These heavy polluting facilities were often sited in low-income and minority communities, sometimes next to public housing. The island could also host a new resilient wastewater treatment plant that could allow aging, overburdened facilities in northern Queens, the South Bronx, and northern Manhattan to close. That in turn would free up land within long blighted communities for constructive use.